Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name's Johnny Vedmore. I'm going to read you an article by Iain Davis, which you can find on iaindavis.com. This is a brilliant article. It's worth understanding, of course. I'm doing a lot of work at the moment on understanding conspiracy and conspiracy theory. It's best to do it if you're going to be able to talk to other people who are going to label you a conspiracy theorist. You better know what you're talking about. So I'm trying to know because I understand most of it and I live within it. But this, of course, is a problem that we see constantly. Some call it conspiracy theory, and it's not, of course. It's something else. It's just conspiracy. It's real life conspiracy. Here we go. There are certain assumptions that are applied to anyone labeled a conspiracy theorist, and all of them are fallacies. Indeed, the term conspiracy theory is nothing more than a propaganda construct designed to silence debate and censor opinion on a range of subjects. Most particularly, it is used as a pejorative to marginalize and discredit whoever challenges the pronouncements and edicts of the state and of the establishment. That is, the public private entities that control the state and that profit from the state. Yes, the establishment with a capital E, may I say. Those of us who have legitimate criticisms of government and its institutions and representatives, who are therefore labeled conspiracy theorists, face a dilemma. We can embrace the term and attempt to redefine it, or we can reject it outright. Either way, it is evident that people who weaponize the conspiracy theory label will continue to use it as long as it serves their propaganda purposes. One of the most insidious aspects of the conspiracy theory fabrication is that the falsehoods associated with the term have been successfully seeded into the public's consciousness. Often, propagandists need do no more than slap this label on the targeted opinion, and the audience will immediately dismiss that viewpoint as a lunatic conspiracy theory. Sadly, this knee-jerk reaction is usually made absent any consideration or even familiarity with the evidence presented by that so-called lunatic conspiracy theorist. This was the reason why conspiracy theorist label was created. The state and its propagandists do not want the public and to even be aware of inconvenient evidence, let alone to examine it. The challenging evidence is buried under a wild conspiracy theory label, thereby signaling to the unsuspecting public that they should automatically reject all the offered facts and evidence. There are a number of components that collectively form the conspiracy theory canard. Let's break them down. I like to break down these sort of things. Come on then, Iain. Break them down for us. First, we have a group of people who supposedly can be identified as conspiracy theorists. Second, we have the allegation that all conspiracy theories share an underlying psychological weakness. I have a weakness for cats. Third, conspiracy theory is said to threaten democracy by undermining trust in democratic institutions. Fourth, conspiracy theorists are purportedly prone to extremism and potential radicalization towards cats. Fifth, conspiracy theory is accused of not being evidence-based. According to legacy media, there's a link between so-called conspiracy theory and the far right and white supremacists. Guardian columnist George Monbiot, for example, wrote that conspiracism is fascism fuel. Almost as successful conspiracy theories originate with or land with the far right. Apparently, this is a common belief held by people who imagine that conspiracy theory exists in the form they have been told it exists. It is also a bold claim from an alleged journalist. There is no evidence to support Monbiot's assertion. Numerous studies have tried to identify common traits of conspiracy theorists. These studies tend to initially identify their subject cohort simply through opinion surveys. If, for example, someone doesn't accept the official account of 9/11 or JFK assassination, the researchers label them conspiracy theorists. Probably the largest demographic study of these alleged conspiracy theorists was undertaken by a political scientist, Joseph Osinski, and Joseph Parent for their 2014 book, American Conspiracy Theories. They found that conspiracy theories could not be categorized demographically. Ethnicity, gender, educational attainment, employment, and economic status, and even political beliefs were not indicative. The only firm trait they could isolate was that conspiracy theories, so-called, tended to be slightly older than the population average, suggesting perhaps that skepticism of the state narratives increases with life experience. Oh, Iain Davis, you were so good at writing. Professor Chris French, I mean that by writing so that people can understand, and it can these. I mean, he's such a good writer. He's such a good. Please take time to read Iain Davis's work. He's a really good way of explaining stuff. Professor Chris French made this observation as reported by the BBC in 2019. When you actually look at the demographic data, belief in conspiracies cut across social class, it cuts across gender, and it cuts across age. Equally, whether you're on the left or right, you're just as likely to see plots against you. This is not to deny that a minority of conspiracy theories are promoted by people on the far right of the political spectrum, nor that some of the far left don't advocate other similar theories. A few conspiracy theories can be considered racist and or anti-Semitic, but there is no evidence to support the allegation that conspiracy theorists, when compared to the general population, are any more or less likely to hold extreme political belief or promote extremist narratives. George Monbiot is certainly not alone in his views, but his published opinion, namely that conspiracy theorists originate with or land with the far right, is complete nonsense. So let's discard his claim now as ignorant claptrap. Oh, look, it's Mr. Claptrap himself. Monbiot's allusion to conspiracism relates to the alleged psychological problems that supposedly lead people to become conspiracy theorists. The conspiracism theory is a product of the worst kind of junk science. It is primarily based upon the notoriously flaky discipline of experimental psychology. One of the seminal papers informing the theory of conspiracism is Dead and Alive, Beliefs in Contradictory Conspiracy Theories, Woods, Douglas and Sutton, 2012. The researchers asked their conspiracy theorist subjects to rate the plausibility of various alleged conspiracy theories. They used a Likert scale where 1 is strongly disagree, 4 is neutral, and 7 is strongly agree. Some of the theories the subjects were asked to consider were contradictory. For example, they asked the subjects to rate the plausibility of the notions that Princess Diana was murdered and that she faked her own death. Using this methodology, the researchers concluded, while it has been known for some time that belief in one conspiracy theory appears to be associated with belief in others, only now do we know that this can even apply to conspiracy theories that are mutually contradictory. But the researchers did not ask their subjects to exclude mutually contradictory theories, only to rate the plausibility of each individually. Thus, there is nothing in their reported findings to support the conclusion they unscientifically reached. They try. It's like a form of like skewing using relativism. It's interesting. It's something that they do a lot on that side. Subsequent research has highlighted how ludicrous their falsely named scientific conclusion was. Yet, despite being roundly disapproved, the erroneous assertion that conspiracy theorists believe contradictory theories simultaneously is repeated ad nauseum by the legacy media, politicians, and academics alike. It forms just one of the groundless truisms spouted by those who spread the conspiracism myth. Or the conspiracy theory, I think you could say. One of the most influential scholars, if not the most influential, in the field of conspiracy research is political science Joseph Osinski. Like many others many other of his peers, he has tried to differentiate between evidence-based knowledge of real or concrete conspiracies such as Iran-Contra or Watergate, and what scientific researchers allege to be the psychologically flawed and evidence-free view held by so-called conspiracists. Brzezinski cites the work of Professor Neil Levy as definitive. In Radically Socialized Knowledge and Conspiracy Theories, Levy states, the typical explanation of an event or process which attracts the label conspiracy theory is an explanation that conflicts with the account advanced by the relevant epistemic authority. Ooh, epistemic. A conspiracy theory that conflicts with the official story, where the official story is an explanation offered by the relevant epistemic authority. It's a prima facie unwarranted. It is because the relevant epistemic authorities, the disturbed network of knowledge, claim gatherers and testers that includes engineers and politics professors, security experts, and journalists, have no doubt over the validity of the explanation that we accept it. Wow. Okay. Neil Levy is not as good a writer as Iain Davis is. It's very hard to read that like off the cuff. And epistemic. I have some problem with that word. Anyway, forgive me. Simply put, the scientific definition of conspiracy theory is an opinion that conflicts with the official narrative as reported by the epistemic authorities. If you question what you are told by the state or by its officials, official representatives, or by the legacy media, you are conspiracy theorists, and therefore, according to the science, mentally deranged. I mean, not mutually exclusive. All related scientific research on conspiracism and claimed conspiracy theory starts from the assumption that to question the state, the establishment, or the designated epistemic authority is delusional. As hard as this fact may be for many to accept, the effective working definition of conspiracy theory in the scientific literature is an opinion that questions power. Clearly, this definition is political, not scientific. The supposed underlying psychology of conspiracism, which allegedly induces people to engage in conspiratorial thinking, is an assumption stemming from the academic's political bias in favor of the state and its institution. It has absolutely no scientific validity. It's true. In his 1949 essay, Citizenship and Social Class, sociologist T.H. Marshall examined and defined democratic ideals. He described them as a functioning system of rights. These rights include the right to freedom of thought and expression, including speech, peaceful protest, freedom of religion and belief, equality of justice, equality of opportunity under the law, and so on. Most of us who live in what we call representative democracies are familiar with these concepts. Rights and freedoms are often touted by our political leaders, academia, and the legacy media as the cornerstones of our polity and culture. Polity, I like that. The entire purpose of representative democracy, it is alleged, is to empower we, the people, to hold decision makers to account, questioning power as a foundational democratic ideal. If we accept the working scientific definition of conspiracy theory, then its inherent questioning of power and overt challenge to authority embodies perhaps the most important democratic principle of all and forms the bedrock of representative democracy. It is not unreasonable to aver that representative democracy cannot possibly exist without conspiracy theory, again, as it is defined in the scientific literature. As we can see, the claim that conspiracy theory threatens democratic institutions is without merit. Representative democracy is not founded on public trust in the state, in its agents or its representatives. On the contrary, representative democracy is built upon the right of people to question the state, its agents and representatives. Autocracy and dictatorships demand public trust. Democracies do not. In a representative democracy, trust must first be earned, and know their actors, state institutions, must constantly maintain whatever trust the public originally choose to invest in them. Wherever and whenever that trust is no longer warranted, the people who live in a democracy are free to question and ultimately dissolve state institutions they do not trust. Trust is not a democratic principle. Questioning power is. Consider that, according to the state institutions like the United Nations, conspiracy theories cause real harm to people, to their health, and also to their physical safety. They amplify and legitimize misconceptions and reinforce stereotypes which can fuel violence and violent extremist ideologies. This is wholly misleading statement, and is disinformation. Disinformation, misinformation, malinformation is a bit of all of it, isn't it? The most violent act imaginable and the most extreme ideology of all is war and all-out commitment to it. Full-scale war is possible only when a state declares it. International war is solely within the purview of one entity, the state. Wars are frequently justified by the state using lies and deception. Furthermore, the ideology of war is unwavering, promoted by the legacy media on behalf of the state. To be clear, the UN alleges that when ordinary men and women from across all sectors of societies, representing all races, economic class, and political views, exercise their democratic right to question power, they are expressing opinions that fuel violence and violent extremist ideology. For such an extraordinary, apparently anti-democratic allegation to be considered even remotely possible, it must be based upon irreproachable evidence. Yet, as we shall see, the UN's claim is not based on any evidence at all. In 2016, UN Special Rapporteur Ben Emerson issued a report to the UN advising its member states on potential policies to counter extremism and terrorism. In his report, Emerson noted the lack of clear agreed-upon definition of extremism. He reported that different UN member states defined extremism based on their own political objectives and national interests. There was no single, cogent explanation of the radicalization process that, as he put it, many programs directed at radicalization are based on the simplistic understanding of the process as a fixed trajectory to violent extremism with identifiable markers along the way. There is no authoritative statistical data on the pathways towards individual radicalization. A year later, in 2017, the U.S. National Academy of Sciences, the NAS, delivered its report countering domestic extremism. The NAS suggested that domestic violence and violent extremist ideology were the result of complex interplay between a wide gamut of socio-political and economic factors, individual characteristics, and life experiences. The following year, in July 2018, the NAS view was reinforced by a team of researchers from Deakin University in a peer-reviewed article, The 3 Ps of Radicalization. The Deakin scholars collated and reviewed the available literature they could find on the process of radicalization that potentially leads to violent extremism. They identified 3 main drivers: push, pull, and personal factors. Push factors are structural factors that propel people towards resentment, such as state repression, relative deprivation, poverty, and injustice. Pull factors are factors that make extremism seem attractive, like ideology, group identity, and belonging, group incentives, and so on. Personal factors are individual character traits that make a person more or less susceptible to push or pull. These include psychological disorders, personality traits, traumatic life experiences, and so on. Presently, the UN maintains that its report, Journey to Extremism in Africa, is the most extensive study yet on what drives people to violent extremism. In keeping with all previous research, the Africa report concluded that radicalization occurs through an intricate combination of influences and life experiences. Here we go. This is the myriad of contributory factors to the radicalization process according to the UN's most extensive study. And you see place of birth, unhappy childhood, ethnic, and then it leads to education, religion, economic conditions, grievance towards government, police, military, and politicians, and democratic systems. Looks like the establishment's got a big part to play in this. Specifically, the report noted, we know the drivers and enablers of violent extremism are multiple, complex, and context-specific, while having religious, ideological, political, economic, and historical dimensions. They defy easy analysis, and understanding of the phenomenon remains incomplete. In the report, called Prevention of Violent Extremism, published in June 2023, the UN noted that the deaths from terrorist activity have fallen considerably worldwide in recent years. Yet, in its promotional literature for the same report, the UN claimed that the rise of violent extremism profoundly threatens human security. How can the UN have it both ways? How can it be that the rise of violent extremism correlates with considerable reduction in terrorist activity and associated deaths? This makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And remember that in the Africa report, which the UN currently calls its most extensive study yet, the UN acknowledges that the causes of radicalization are multiple, complex, and context-specific and defy easy analysis. This thoroughly refutes the manifest ease with which the UN proclaims, without cause, that so-called conspiracy theories fuel violence and violent extremist ideologies. This begs the question, what on earth does the UN think violent extremism is, if not terrorism? The bottom line is that, by its own admission, the UN has absolutely no evidence to support any of its conspiracy theory assertions. Rather, the UN is simply making up its own entire conspiracism thesis from whole cloth. In reality, so-called conspiracy theories are overwhelmingly ordinary people with legitimate opinions that span a wide range of issues. Their opinions do not lead them to adopt extremist ideologies or to commit violent acts. There is no evidence at all that supports this widely promulgated contention. Nor are alleged conspiracy theorists a unique group of malcontents with psychological problems. The only defining characteristics these people possess is that they exercise their right to question power. They do not seek to undermine democracy, but rather exercise the rights and freedoms that democracy is supposedly based on. It is a behavior that the states deem unacceptable and that leads to the states to its epistemic authorities, including the legacy media, to label them conspiracy theorists. The observation in no way implies that the conspiracy theorists are always right. Conspiracy theories can be bigoted. They can be ridiculous. They may lack supporting evidence. They may cause offense. And they are sometimes just plain wrong. In other words, they are just like any other opinion. But equally, there is nothing inherently inaccurate or dangerous about every opinion labeled conspiracy theory. There is only one way to ascertain if an alleged conspiracy theory is valid or not. Examine the evidence. Unfortunately, the conspiracy theory label was created specifically to discourage people from looking at evidence. There are countless examples of conspiracy theory or theorist labels being used to hide evidence, obscure facts, and deny legitimate concerns. In part 2, we will look at a few of those examples and explore the wider geopolitical context in which the conspiracy theory label is deployed. And at the end, he says, I extend my gratitude to my editor, who has provided invaluable contributions to my article since October 2021, but who, for personal reasons, prefers to remain anonymous. And this is Iain Davis, who you can find out on iaindavis.com, as you see spelled there. And Iain Davis is on his Substack as well, that you can get from this article, and I will link this article in, and we'll do a read through of number 2 soon. I would suggest supporting such work, of course. And you have been sitting with me, Johnny Vedmore, today to listen to Iain Davis's articles. Some call it Conspiracy Theory Part 1. I hope you enjoyed that, and it gives you a lot to discuss and ponder and think about. For the time being, I'll see you later. Bye.